Okay, let's have a look at units, which is a major part of the game. So what is a unit? Well, a unit is one or more models that's just grouped together. So there's some examples here. There's 5 Illyrian Reavers, 30 archers, I think that's 20 spearmen and an eagle. They're all examples of units. So a unit can be one model like the eagle, or when they're grouped together, they become units of whatever size that you've bought. So multiple models are formed into ranks and files. The ranks have to be uniform. So whatever you decide, these are 5 wide. So it's got to be 5 wide all the way back. If you don't have enough to fill up 5 wide all the way back, any gaps go onto the back rank. So you can't have like a rank of 5, a rank of 3, a rank of 5, a rank of 2. If there's any gaps, they come off the back rank. Similarly, any casualties that the unit takes, they come off the back rank first. Once the unit is formed, it stays together like that for the rest of the game. So you can't, say, break up this unit of 30 archers into 2 units of 15, or you can't add more archers to this unit if it starts taking some damage. It's stuck like that for the rest of the game. They all move together at the same time. They all target the same things. For shooting, combat's a bit different. With the ranks, you see that's 5 wide. These are 10 wide. There's a special rule that applies to units, which is horde formation. A horde is anything that's 10 models wide or more. And there's special rules that apply to horde, which is the main one is that you get to fight in an extra rank. So there's advantages and disadvantages to that. All units have facings. In fact, all models have facings. And then all the units that are made of models have facings as well. So let's get these out of the way. So this eagle, for example, facings come off at a 45 degree from the side of the base. And that defines where the unit facing is. So let's use this high-tech thing here. Where is he? Put him out the way. So like that. So he's facing this way. That's his front, that arc there. That arc there is his flank. And at the back, that's his rear arc. This all is important for spell casting, shooting, charging. It all relies on what facing your unit has, and it's very dependent on where you hit an enemy unit in what facing you're going to hit it in. It'll make more sense when I come on to the individual phases. So just like the individual models, the unit has a facing as well. That's not an ideal thing there, but again, it comes off 45 degree angle like that. So that's the unit's front facing. That's the unit side, and out the back, that's the rear. Again, things shooting, combat, magic, a lot of them will mention what facing you're on. So if anything refers to a unit's forward arc, it's that front facing. It's important in shooting and magic and things like that. So certain upgrades that units can take. One of the more common ones is the command group. So for these spearmen, he hasn't got a champion model, but we'll just use him. So the command group is made up of a champion, standard bearer, and a musician. You don't have to buy them all. You can buy just a champion or just a standard bearer or just a musician. The command group have to go on the front rank if possible. If you start adding more characters and things, there may not be enough space, and then you have to decide whether you want the command group or the characters to go into the back rank. But if there's space for them, they have to go on the front rank. They all do different things. The champion, we'll just say he's the champion. He's usually got a better profile than the rest of the unit. Usually have an extra attack or better weapon skill or something like that. He can issue and accept challenges, which will be more relevant in the combat episode. He's also the last model that's removed from the unit if it's just being targeted by, if the unit itself is just being targeted. So he should be the last model that gets removed. You can, in combat, target the champion separately, in which case he will die before the rest of the unit if he's killed. However, wounds that you inflict on the champion don't overflow onto the unit, but wounds that you inflict onto the unit do overflow into the champion, if that. So an example of that is if this unit was in combat and there's only 10 of them left and they suffered 10 unsaved wounds, they would all die. However, if there was only 10 of them left and 5 of the attacks were allocated onto the unit champion and he died, there would only be 1 wound suffered by him. They don't overflow onto the unit itself. So the other 4 wounds would just be wasted, but that'll make more sense in the combat episode. He does also benefit from a rule called Look Out Sir, which I'll cover on the characters bit. But basically, if there's enough models left in his unit and he's hit by a template weapon, one of them, there's a good chance will jump into the way of whatever's going to hit him, and they'll take the hit instead of him. So he can be kept alive a bit longer. That's about it for the champion. The standard bearer, they give a +1 to combat resolution at the end of a fight, which I'll get onto again in the combat phase. They are the last model to be removed from a unit unless there's a champion there. But if a unit breaks in combat and isn't run down, the standard bearer always dies, because they die where they stand rather than running away and face the shame of losing the regimental colours or whatever it is. So that's him. And the musician is very useful, actually. There's quite a few things. So if a unit's fleeing, he adds +1 to the unit's leadership on the rally test. So these elves are leadership 8. If they were testing to rally, they'd test on leadership 9. If you're in combat and it's a tie, so the combat resolution is the same, the musician adds +1 in the event of a tie, so you win by 1. If they've both got musicians, then it's still a tie and nothing happens. The musician also allows the unit to swift reform, which is when you're in the movement phase and you reform. Normally you can't move if you reform, but if you pass a leadership test, the musician allows you to move after you reform, which see the movement episode for that one. Musician's the last model to be removed from the unit unless there is a standard bearer and a champion present. So the order of removing them is musician goes first, then the standard bearer, and the champion's last. You can target the champion independently, separately in combat. You can't target these separately. It's assumed if one of these is killed, then another person picks up the banner or the drum or whatever and keeps on doing his role. So I'll move on to characters, which are also a type of unit. They can be lone characters, just out by themselves, but more often you'll see that they join units and they bring certain advantages. They are, one of which is they can give their leadership to the unit that they're in, which means that they're harder to break and they're more likely to pass leadership tests. They can be out by themselves. You'll see like characters who are also monsters, or characters riding monsters, things like that. They're out by themselves. They're quite powerful fighters, usually by themselves. But characters can join units. They can join other characters to make a unit of characters. And more than one character can join a unit. There are some restrictions on what type of units that characters can join. So they can't normally join units of monsters, flyers, chariots, swarms and war machines, although there are exemptions in individual armies for that. So check the army book. They can't join units if their unit is fleeing or already in combat. And if the character themselves are a monster, or they're riding a monster or a chariot, then they can't join a unit. But other than that, they can join anything. Again, like the command group, they go to the front rank. Unless there's not space, then they go to the rank behind. Characters are either deployed in the unit at the start of the game, in the deployment phase. or they can join a unit during the course of a game. If you want them to join a unit, they just have to move and make contact with the base of the unit, then they go in. Again, they always go to the front rank, no matter how they join the unit. If a character or multiple characters joins a unit, it's then a combined unit, and they have certain things that apply to them. For example, they move at the rate of the slowest model in the unit. So you can have a situation where a character on say a horse joins a unit of infantry. He's then restricted to the speed of the infantry. Usually cavalry are faster than standard infantry. Another advantage is, of course, you can't shoot the character. You can't target him separately when he's in the unit, unless there's fewer than 5 rank or file models left. I mentioned lookouts earlier about the champion. Characters get it as well. So if they're hit by a template weapon and it scatters and hits him, for example, as long as there are 5 rank and file models left in the unit, not including the champion, because he gets it as well, you roll a dice. On a 2-up, someone in the unit has warned them about the whatever cannonball or something coming towards them, and the unit takes the hit instead of the character. But if you've got fewer than 5 rank and file models left, you can't do that, and he just has to take the hit. Sometimes characters will have different size bases to the unit, the models in the unit that he wants to join. If the character's base is larger than 1 model, but it has exactly the same footprint as 2 or more models, you just move those models to the back rank and position the character where they were. But if it doesn't fit neatly into the unit, you just put them to the side like that. So they just go like that. So say if that was a character, that Reaver won't fit into these archers. He's got a different size base. So if he was a character, he just goes onto the side. If a character's replaced the same footprint of models, if it's the same, if it's compatible, it still counts for rank bonuses and steadfast and things like that. But if he's on the edge, he doesn't count. That doesn't make him that unit 11 wide. He's just ignored. 2 very important characters are the General and the Battle Standard Bearer. Technically, a General is just the model in the army with the highest leadership, so a champion could do it. But it's more often that you're going to have a character model to do it. So in this case, that's an Archmage. Generals pass off their own leadership to every unit that's within 12 inches of the general. So his leadership 9. So he'll be passing that off to that unit of archers, the Reavers here, and then the Spearmen, as long as he's within 12 inches of them. Whenever they're called on to take a leadership test, they test on his leadership rather than their own. So there's an advantage to having a Battle Standard Bearer as well. Everyone within 12 inches of the Battle Standard Bearer gets to re-roll all failed leadership tests. So psychology, fear, terror, breaking in combat, Battle Standard Bearer lets you re-roll it if you fail. So these 2 together use the General's leadership, re-roll, and all these units surrounding will get to do that. Like the unit Standard Bearers, if the Battle Standard Bearer flees from combat, or is in a unit that flees from combat, he just dies. So there is a bit of a risk as well involved if you're getting the Battle Standard Bearer into combat. But they do add +1 to combat resolution, as well as, so if you've got a Standard and the Battle Standard Bearer in 1 unit, that's +2. But I'll get onto that in the combat episode. But I think that's it for characters and units. So thanks very much.